The rain battered the bus stop's flimsy roof, each drop a reminder of how life could be relentless. Sarah Bennett stood there, shivering, her thin coat soaked through, clutching a grocery bag that held tonight's dinner, canned soup and day-old bread. At 34, she was a single mom to 6-year-old Mia, who waited at home with a neighbor. Sarah's life was a tightrope walk over a chasm of bills, exhaustion, and dreams she'd long buried. Tonight, she was bone-tired, her shift at the diner stretching past midnight. As the city bus screeched to a stop, she climbed aboard, unaware that this ride would change everything. Sarah settled into a seat near the back, her wet shoes squeaking on the floor. The bus was mostly empty, save for a man in a crisp suit, his face half hidden by a phone screen. She barely noticed him, her mind was on Mia, who'd asked for a new pair of sneakers that Sarah couldn't afford. The guilt gnawed at her, a familiar ache. Her eyes grew heavy, the hum of the bus lulling her into a rare moment of stillness. Before she knew it, her head tilted, and she drifted off, her cheek resting against the shoulder of the man beside her. James Harper, the man in the suit, was no stranger to late nights. As CEO of Harper Tech, a rising tech firm, his days were a blur of meetings and decisions. At 40, he'd built an empire, but his personal life was a hollow shell. Long hours had cost him his marriage years ago. He glanced at the woman now asleep on his shoulder, her face etched with exhaustion even in sleep. Her grocery bag had tipped over, a can of soup rolling into his lap. He could have nudged her awake, but something stopped him. Maybe it was the vulnerability in her expression, or the way her hands, rough from work, still clutched the bag like it was all she had. He stayed still, letting her rest. Sarah woke with a start as the bus lurched to a stop. Her eyes widened in horror when she realized she'd been leaning on a stranger, a sharply dressed one at that. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," she stammered, scrambling to gather her spilled groceries. Her face burned with embarrassment. "I didn't mean to, I'm just so tired." James smiled, his eyes kind. "No harm done. You looked like you needed the rest." He handed her the can of soup, noticing the worn edges of her coat. "Rough day?" She laughed, a brittle sound. "Rough life." The words slipped out before she could stop them, and she regretted them instantly. But James didn't pry. Instead, he asked her name. "Sarah," she said, hesitant. When he introduced himself as James, no last name, no title, she felt a flicker of ease. The bus started moving again, and they fell into conversation, tentative at first, then flowing. Sarah found herself talking about Mia, her pride and joy, and the constant juggle of work and motherhood. James listened, really listened, in a way that felt foreign to her. The challenge for Sarah was survival. Every day was a battle against mounting bills, rent, utilities, Mia's school supplies. Her diner job barely covered the basics, and her second job cleaning offices was eating into her time with Mia. She'd once dreamed of being a graphic designer, but that felt like another lifetime. Her biggest fear was failing Mia, not giving her the life she deserved. The weight of it all made moments like this, talking to a kind stranger, feel like a stolen luxury. James, meanwhile, faced his own struggles, though they were less visible. His company was thriving, but the pressure to stay ahead in a cutthroat industry left him isolated. He'd grown cynical, distrustful, assuming people wanted something from him, money, influence, a piece of his success. Yet here was Sarah, who didn't know who he was, sharing her story with no agenda. It stirred something in him, a longing for connection he'd buried under boardroom deals. As the bus neared Sarah's stop, James made a split-second decision. "Can I give you my number?" he asked, scribbling it on a business card. "If you ever need anything, a ride, a coffee, someone to talk to." Sarah hesitated, wary of kindness that seemed too good to be true, but took the card. She thanked him and stepped off into the rain, clutching it like a lifeline. Days passed, and Sarah didn't call. Pride and fear held her back. She didn't want to seem desperate. But when Mia came home crying because her sneakers had finally split, Sarah's resolve cracked. She dialed James's number, expecting nothing. To her surprise, he answered on the first ring. They met for coffee, and what started as a cautious friendship grew into something deeper. James was drawn to Sarah's resilience, her fierce love for Mia. Sarah found in James a quiet strength, a man who saw her not as a struggling mom but as a person with dreams worth reviving. The turning point came when Sarah mentioned her old graphic design portfolio, tucked away in a drawer. James, recognizing her talent, offered her a freelance project at HarperTech. Sarah was terrified. She hadn't designed in years, and imposter syndrome loomed large. But James believed in her, and with his encouragement, she took the leap. The project was a success, leading to a part-time role at the company. For the first time, Sarah saw a path out of survival mode, a chance to give Mia stability. Their relationship wasn't without challenges. Sarah struggled with the disparity between their worlds, his penthouse life versus her cramped apartment. She worried he'd tire of her, that she'd always be less than. James, meanwhile, grappled with opening up emotionally, fearing vulnerability after years of guarding himself. There were moments of doubt, like when Sarah overheard a colleague at HarperTech whisper that she was just a charity case. She nearly quit, but James sat her down, his voice steady. "You're here because you're talented, Sarah. Don't let anyone, including yourself, tell you otherwise." Mia was the glue that held them together. James adored her, taking her to science museums and teaching her to code simple games. Sarah watched, heart swelling, as Mia laughed with James, her guarded little girl blooming under his care. One evening, as they built a pillow fort in Sarah's living room, James turned to her. "I don't want to just be your friend, Sarah. I want to build something real with you and Mia." Tears welled in her eyes as she nodded, realizing she'd found not just love but a partner who saw her strength. The story's climax came when Sarah landed a major design contract, enough to move her and Mia into a better apartment. At the celebration dinner, James raised a glass, his eyes shining. "To Sarah, who reminds us that no matter how hard life gets, you can rise." Sarah smiled, her heart full, knowing she'd fought for this moment, not just for herself, but for MIA.as. The bus where they'd met rolled by outside. Sarah reflected on that rainy night. She'd been at her lowest, yet it led her here, to a life where she could dream again. The lesson wasn't just about love or success, it was about resilience, about how a single moment of kindness could spark a chain reaction of hope. For every struggling soul watching, Sarah's story whispered, "Keep going. You're stronger than you know." And sometimes, the person who changes your life is just a stranger on a bus, waiting to believe in you.